The phone rang at 3:47 a.m., shattering the silence of Han Kyung-soo's penthouse. He stared at the unknown number glowing on his screen, every instinct screaming danger. In his world, calls at this hour meant blood, betrayal, or both. "Mr. Han." The voice was professional, detached. "This is Mercy General Hospital. Your wife." "Ex-wife," he corrected, ice forming in his chest. "Your ex-wife. Nia Washington was brought in an hour ago. She's in active labor. The baby is in distress and she's asking for you." The room tilted. 8 months. It had been 8 months since he'd signed those divorce papers, since he'd watched Nia walk out of his life, with tears streaming down her face. Her hand protectively curved over a belly he hadn't known carried his child. 8 months of silence. 8 months of drowning in regret and soju, of building walls so high even his own brother couldn't scale them. And now this. "I'll be there in 10 minutes, he said, already moving toward the door, his heart hammering against his ribs like it was trying to break free. 3 years earlier, Nia Washington had learned early that life didn't hand out fairness like free samples at Costco. At 26, she juggled 2 jobs, medical transcriptionist by day, cocktail waitress at the Lotus Club by night, and still barely made rent on her studio apartment in Queens. But she had her pride, her grandmother's gold cross around her neck, and a smile that could light up the darkest room. The Lotus Club wasn't just any club. Everyone in New York knew it belonged to the Han family, one of the most powerful Korean organized crime syndicates on the East Coast. Nia knew the rumors, saw the way patrons whispered when certain men entered, watched how the manager's hands trembled when handling special reservations. But the tips were excellent, the work was steady, and she'd learned to navigate dangerous waters with grace. She'd never expected to collide, literally, with the man who owned it all. It happened on a Friday night, the club pulsing with bass-heavy K-hip-hop and expensive cologne. Nia balanced a tray of top-shelf whiskey, weaving through the crowd with practiced precision. She didn't see him until it was too late, a wall of solid muscle in a tailored black suit, turning at the exact wrong moment. The tray flew. Glass shattered. Amber liquid splashed across pristine Italian leather shoes and the bottom of perfectly pressed slacks. Time stopped. Nia's heart dropped to her knees as she looked up and up into the coldest, most beautiful face she'd ever seen. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could cut diamonds, and eyes like black ice that seemed to see straight through her bones into her terrified soul. A thin scar traced from his left eyebrow to his temple, the only imperfection on an otherwise devastating face. "I am so sorry," she stammered, immediately dropping to her knees to pick up the broken glass, her hands shaking. Around them the club fell silent. Everyone was watching. "Please. I'll pay for dry cleaning. Stop." One word, delivered in a voice like smoke and steel with the barest hint of an accent. A hand appeared in her line of vision, long fingers, immaculate nails, a platinum watch that probably cost more than her car. "You'll cut yourself." Nia froze, torn between survival instinct and the shocking gentleness in that command. Slowly she looked up again. He was crouched now, eye level with her, and this close she could see gold flecks in those dark eyes, could smell his cologne, something expensive and cedar-scented that made her pulse skip. "I'm really sorry, Mr. Han." His gaze moved over her face with an intensity that made her skin heat. "Han Kyung-soo, and you are?" "Unemployed, probably," she muttered before she could stop herself. The corner of his mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile, but it transformed his face from intimidating to breathtaking. "You think I would fire someone for an accident? You're the owner." It wasn't a question. Everyone knew Han Kyung-soo owned the Lotus Club, along with half the commercial real estate in Manhattan and several shipping companies that definitely didn't just ship legal goods. "And I just ruined your very expensive shoes." "They're just shoes." He stood in one fluid movement, extending his hand again, this time clearly to help her up. "But you're right about one thing. You work for me now." Nia blinked, certain she'd misheard over the music that had cautiously started again. What?" "Not here." He glanced around at the watching faces, and they all suddenly found somewhere else to look. My companies always need good people, someone who apologizes before making excuses, who thinks of consequences. That's rare. His eyes held hers. Come to my office Monday. We'll discuss your skills. I'm just a waitress and a medical transcriptionist, Nia said, still kneeling in broken glass and spilled whiskey, wondering if she'd hit her head. Monday, 9 a.m., Han Tower, 40th floor. He pulled a business card from his jacket, pressed it into her palm. His fingers were warm, his touch brief, but electric. Don't be late, miss. Washington, Nia Washington. Nia. He said her name like he was tasting it, like it was something precious. Then he nodded once and walked away, his ruined shoes leaving wet prints on the marble floor, his presence parting the crowd like Moses at the Red Sea. Nia knelt there for a full minute after he disappeared, her heart racing, the business card burning in her hand like a promise. Around her, the other waitresses were already whispering, shooting her looks that ranged from envious to pitying. Girl, you don't know what you just got yourself into, Jasmine, another waitress, murmured as she helped Nia stand. That man is dangerous. I know, Nia whispered back, pocketing the card with trembling fingers. But dangerous in what way? She wasn't sure. Dangerous to her safety, or dangerous to something far more vital, like her heart? She'd find out Monday. The weekend passed in a blur of anxiety and Google searches. Han Kyung-soo's name yielded surprisingly little, a few business profiles, photos from charity galas where he stood stone-faced in tuxedos, articles about his real estate empire. Nothing about the rumors everyone whispered, nothing about the Jopok connections. But Nia found one photo that made her pause. Han Kyung-soo at a children's hospital ribbon-cutting ceremony, and in the background, almost hidden, his face had softened as he watched a little boy in a wheelchair laugh at something. For just a moment, the ice had thawed. Monday morning, Nia stood before Han Tower in her best interview suit, a navy blue number from Target that she'd splurged on 2 years ago, feeling like an imposter. The building was all glass and steel, piercing the Manhattan sky like a blade. Inside, everything was marble and chrome, beautiful Asian women in designer clothes clicking past on impossible heels. The receptionist's smile was polite, but assessing as Nia gave her name. 40th floor, Mr. Han is expecting you. The elevator ride felt like ascending to heaven or hell. She wasn't sure which. When the doors opened, a young Korean man in glasses waited, his expression friendly but cautious. Miss Washington. I'm David Kim, Mr. Han's executive assistant. Please, follow me. They walked through an office suite that screamed money and power, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, art that was probably worth more than her life, assistants moving with quiet efficiency. Finally, David stopped at massive double doors. He's finishing a call. He'll be just a moment. David's smile was genuine now. And Miss Washington, don't let him intimidate you. His bark is worse than his bite. Before Nia could respond, the doors opened from within. Han Kyung-soo stood backlit by the morning sun, and Nia's breath caught. In daylight, in his territory, he was even more devastating. Charcoal suit that probably cost 5 figures. White shirt open at the collar, revealing a glimpse of a tattoo. Dark hair perfectly styled. But it was his eyes that held her. Still that black ice, but now she could see the intelligence burning beneath. Miss Washington. He gestured to a chair opposite his desk. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Han. Nia sat, forcing her spine straight, channeling every ounce of her grandmother's dignity. Though I'm still not sure what opportunity that is exactly. A ghost of that almost smile. Direct. I like that. He sat across from her, steepled his fingers. I need someone I can trust in a sensitive position, someone who sees things but knows when to stay silent. Someone smart enough to notice details, but wise enough to know which details matter. That sounds suspiciously like you're describing a spy. I'm describing a personal assistant. His gaze never left hers. to me. Nia's heart stumbled. I don't have experience. You have 2 years of medical transcription, which means attention to detail and confidentiality. You've worked in my club for 6 months without a single complaint, which means discretion and grace under pressure. You're educated, City College, psychology degree, full scholarship. You take care of your grandmother in the Bronx, send money to your younger sister at Howard. You don't drink, don't do drugs, don't have a criminal record. He leaned back. Did I miss anything? Nia's mouth had gone dry. You investigated me. I investigate everyone who gets close to me. No apology in his tone. In my world, trust is earned through transparency, not promises. Your world, Nia repeated slowly, the world where you're not just a real estate mogul. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Finally, Han spoke, his voice quiet but firm. I will never lie to you, Nia. My business has many faces. Some of them are legal. Some exist in grey areas. But I will tell you this. I have never hurt an innocent person. I have never touched drugs or human trafficking. I protect my people. I honor my word, and I punish those who break theirs. His eyes bore into hers. If you work for me, you'll see things, hear things, but you'll also be safer than you've ever been in your life. No one will touch you. No one will threaten you. You'll have health insurance, a salary 4 times what you make now, and my word that I will never ask you to do anything illegal. Why me? The question escaped before Nia could stop it. You could hire anyone. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. Because when you looked at me Friday night, you saw a person. Not a name, not a reputation. Just a man whose shoes got wet. He stood, moved to the window. Everyone in my life wants something from me. Power, money, protection, fear. But you just wanted to make it right. That's rare in my world, Nia. That's precious. Nia stood too, her mind racing. This was insane. She should walk away. Go back to her double shifts and her safe small life. But something in his voice, in the way he stood with his hands in his pockets, staring out at the city like a king, surveying his kingdom and finding it wanting. Something called to the part of her that had always wondered what lay beyond the boundaries she'd drawn. I need 24 hours to think about it, she said finally. He turned and she saw surprise in those ice-chip eyes. Most people would have answered immediately. I'm not most people, Mr. Han. No. His voice dropped, intimate. You're certainly not. As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her at the door. Nia. She looked back. Whatever you decide, the job at the club is still yours if you want it. This conversation changes nothing unless you say yes. That's when she knew. This dangerous, powerful man who could crush her with a word, he was giving her a choice, real choice. Not many people in her life had ever done that. I'll call you tomorrow, she said softly, and walked out before her racing heart could make the decision for her. Nia said yes. She told herself it was for the money, for the health insurance that would cover her grandmother's diabetes medication, for the chance to pay off her student loans before she turned 30. She told herself it had nothing to do with the way Han Kyung-soo looked at her like she was a puzzle he desperately wanted to solve. She told herself a lot of lies that first month. The reality of working for Han Kyung-soo was nothing like she'd imagined. Yes, there were the obvious signs of his double life, meetings with hard-eyed men who spoke in rapid Korean, phone calls he took behind closed doors, the way his head of security, a terrifying man named Kang, always seemed to be armed. But there was also the mundane, scheduling conference calls, managing his calendar, ordering lunch, proofreading contracts. And there was Han himself. He was exacting but never cruel, demanding but fair. He expected excellence and gave it in return. When Nia worked late, he ordered dinner for both of them. When her grandmother had a health scare, he sent her home in his car and told her to take as long as she needed. When a business associate made a pass at her during a meeting, Han's voice had gone so cold the man literally backed out of the office apologizing. But it was the small moments that undid her. The way he took his coffee, black, no sugar, always from the same bodega 2 blocks away because he said they made it right. The reading glasses he wore late at night when reviewing contracts, which made him look younger, more vulnerable. The way he spoke Korean with his brother on the phone, his voice warming in a way it never did in English. The way he looked at her sometimes, like he was drowning and she was air. "You're staring," Han said one evening, not looking up from the contract he was reviewing. They were alone in his office, the city spread out below them like scattered diamonds, the clock pushing past 9. Nia felt heat crawl up her neck. "I'm not staring, I'm thinking." Thinking loudly. Now he did look up, removing his glasses. "What's on your mind?" She should have said nothing. Should have kept the professional distance they'd maintained for 6 weeks. But the late hour, the intimacy of the empty office, the way the lamplight softened his sharp features, it made her brave. "I'm trying to figure you out," she admitted. "Everyone says you're this monster, this heartless criminal, but the man I work for donates anonymously to children's hospitals. The man I work for remembered my grandmother's birthday and sent flowers. The man I work for." She trailed off, suddenly aware she'd said too much. "The man you work for is both things," Han said quietly. He stood, moving around the desk with that predatory grace he never quite hid. "I'm not a good man, Nia. I've done things that would horrify you, but I've also built something, an organization that protects thousands of people, that keeps drugs out of our neighborhoods, that punishes predators the law won't touch." He stopped a foot away from her, close enough that she could smell his cologne. "Does that make me a monster or a hero?" "It makes you human," Nia whispered. Something flashed in his eyes, surprise, hunger, something that made her pulse skip. "You should go home. It's late." Kyung-soo. His name escaped without permission, the first time she'd used it. His jaw tightened. Don't make this harder than it already is." "Make what harder?" He stepped closer, and her back hit the desk. He planted his hands on either side of her, caging her in without touching her. This close, she could see the darker rim around his irises, the way his pupils had blown wide. "You work for me," he said, his voice rough. "There are rules, boundaries. If I cross them, I'm no better than the men I punish." "What if I want you to cross them?" The words left her mouth before her brain caught up. Bold, reckless, true. His breath hitched. For a long moment, they stayed frozen, his mouth inches from hers, her hands gripping the desk edge, the air between them crackling with electricity. Then, with visible effort, he pushed away. "Go home, Nia, please." She went, but she felt his eyes on her all the way to the elevator. And when she looked back just before the doors closed, he was standing at his office window, one hand pressed against the glass, watching her leave with an expression that looked like hunger and agony mixed into something unbearable. That was the night everything changed. The next morning David greeted her with a knowing smile. "He's been in his office since 6 a.m., hasn't come out. Whatever happened last night, you got under his skin." "Nothing happened," Nia protested, but her cheeks burned. "Uh-huh." David's grin widened. "For what it's worth, I've never seen him like this. Not with anyone." Before Nia could respond, Kang appeared, his scarred face unreadable. "Miss Washington, Mr. Han wants to see you." Her heart hammered as she walked to his office. Han sat behind his desk, looking every inch the criminal kingpin in a black suit, his hair slightly disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. "Close the door," he said without preamble. She did, slowly. "I've been thinking about what you said last night." His voice was controlled, but she heard the strain beneath it. "About wanting me to cross boundaries. I need you to understand something, Nia. If we go down this road, there's no going back. My world is dangerous. People who get close to me become targets, and I—" He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. "I haven't let myself want something this badly in a very long time. It makes me reckless, dangerous." "Maybe I don't want safe," Nia said quietly. Maybe I've been safe my whole life and it's left me empty. He stood so fast his chair rolled back. In 3 strides he was in front of her, his hand cupping her face with a gentleness that made her eyes sting. "You have no idea what you're asking for," he whispered, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "Then show me." His control snapped. He kissed her like a man starving, like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning, his other hand sliding into her hair, tilting her head back to deepen the kiss. Nia gasped against his mouth, her hands fisting in his jacket, pulling him closer, desperate for more. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Han rested his forehead against hers. "This is insane," he murmured. "Completely," she agreed. "I'm still your boss. Technically, you're everyone's boss." He huffed a laugh, the sound surprising them both. "What am I going to do with you?" "I can think of a few things," Nia said, then blushed at her own boldness. His eyes darkened. Dangerous woman. But he was smiling, really smiling, and it transformed him into someone younger, lighter, more like the boy he must have been before life and blood and secrets hardened him. "We should set rules," Nia said, trying to be practical, even as her lips still tingled from his kiss. "Keep this private. No PDA at work. No special treatment." "Agreed." His hand still cradled her face like something precious. "But Nia, you need to know, if you're mine, you're mine. I don't share. I don't do casual. And I protect what's mine with everything I have." The possessiveness should have scared her. Instead, it made heat pool in her belly. "I can work with that." "Can you?" His voice dropped lower, intimate. "Can you handle belonging to someone like me?" She met his eyes squarely. "Can you handle belonging to someone like me? Because it goes both ways, Kyung-soo. If I'm yours, you're mine too." Surprise flickered across his face, then something that looked dangerously like awe. "I've never belonged to anyone. There's a first time for everything." He kissed her again, softer this time, almost reverent. When he pulled back, his expression had shifted to something determined. "Tonight, have dinner with me. Not as your boss, as a man who wants to know everything about you." "That sounds like a date, Mr. Han." "It is, Miss Washington. And call me Kyung-soo when we're alone. I want to hear my name in your voice." That evening, he took her to a small Korean restaurant in Queens, the kind of place with plastic chairs and handwritten menus. Nothing like the 5-star establishments she'd expected. The grandmother who ran it greeted him in rapid Korean, then looked at Nia with bright, curious eyes. "Your girlfriend is beautiful," she said in accented English, beaming. "Very beautiful." "Yes, she is," Kyung-soo replied, his hand finding Nia's under the table. They talked for hours, about her dreams of going to medical school someday, about his complicated relationship with his family's expectations, about her grandmother's stories of growing up in Georgia, about his memories of Seoul. He taught her to use chopsticks properly, laughing when she dropped rice for the 3rd time. She made him try her grandmother's hot sauce, grinning at his shocked expression. "This could kill a man," he gasped, reaching for water. "Builds character," she teased. As they walked back to his car, their hands linked, Nia felt something shift in her chest, something terrifying and wonderful. She was falling for him. Had probably been falling since that first night when he'd crouched in broken glass and looked at her like she mattered. "What are you thinking?" Kyung-soo asked, opening the car door for her. "That this is the best date I've ever been on." He caught her hand, kissed her knuckles. "It's the best date I've ever been on, too." As they drove through the city lights, Nia let herself believe, just for a moment, that maybe they could make this work, that love could bridge the gap between their worlds, between his darkness and her light. She had no idea how wrong she was, or how much pain lay ahead. 6 months into their relationship, Nia had integrated into Kyung-soo's life with surprising ease. She'd met his younger brother, Han Min-jun, who'd looked at her with open astonishment, before hugging her and whispering, "Thank you for making him smile." She'd learned to navigate the complex politics of his organization, understanding without being told which meetings required her absence, which associates were trusted, which were merely tolerated. She'd also learned that loving Han Kyung-soo meant accepting that sometimes he came home with blood on his knuckles and secrets in his eyes. "Marry me," he said one night. They were in his penthouse, Nia curled against him on the couch, some Korean drama playing on the screen that neither of them watched. His fingers had been absently stroking her hair, and she'd been half asleep, content in a way she'd never been before. "What?" She sat up, certain she'd misheard. He turned to face her, and in his eyes was an intensity that made her breath catch. "Marry me, Nia. I know it's fast. I know my life is complicated, but I've never been more certain of anything." He pulled a box from his pocket, opened it to reveal a ring that made her gasp, a perfect solitaire diamond surrounded by smaller stones, elegant and understated. "You make me want to be better. You make me believe I can be better. Say yes." Nia's hands trembled as she looked from the ring to his face. She should ask for time, should consider the implications, the dangers, the fact that they'd only known each other 8 months. But when she looked at him, this powerful, dangerous man who melted for her touch, who remembered how she took her coffee, who'd held her while she cried about her grandmother's worsening health, she knew there was only one answer. Yes. The kiss that followed was everything. Desperate, claiming, tender. When he slid the ring onto her finger, his hands shook slightly, and that small sign of vulnerability undid her completely. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "Even if I'm damned for it, I love you. I love you too." She pulled him closer. "We'll figure out the damned part together." They married quietly 2 months later at City Hall, with only Min-jun, David, and Nia's grandmother present. It was everything and nothing. No fancy wedding, no hundreds of guests, just them and their love and promises that felt like vows written in starlight. The first year of marriage was bliss, punctuated by normal couple arguments, him working too late, her spending too much time at the hospital where her grandmother was becoming a frequent patient, his overprotectiveness, her stubborn independence. But they always came back to each other, always found their way through. Until the night everything shattered. Nia came home from visiting her grandmother to find Kyung-soo in his office, a woman with him, tall, elegant, Korean, beautiful in a way that made Nia's stomach clench. They stood close, too close, the woman's hand on his arm, her expression intimate in a way that made Nia's blood run cold. "Kyung-soo?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended. He turned, and guilt flashed across his face before he could mask it. "Nia, you're home early." "Who is this?" The woman smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm Park Ji-won. Kyung-soo and I have history." Something in the way she said history made Nia's world tilt. "What kind of history?" "Ji-won was just leaving," Kyung-soo said firmly, but the woman didn't move. "Was I?" Ji-won's smile sharpened. "I thought we were discussing the merger and other matters. Get out." Kyung-soo's voice went cold, the tone he used with enemies. "Now." Ji-won left with a final look at Nia that felt like a threat wrapped in silk. When the door closed, silence fell heavy and suffocating. "Who is she really?" Nia asked, her hands clenched into fists. Kyung-soo ran a hand through his hair, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked lost. "She's the daughter of another organization head. Our families had an arrangement. Before I met you." The word arrangement hit like a physical blow. An arranged marriage. It was never finalized. I called it off when I met you. "But she's back now." Nia's voice shook. "And you didn't tell me. You let me walk in and find you with her like what?" Anger flashed in his eyes now. "Like I was cheating. I've never touched another woman since the day I met you." Nia never even thought about it. "Then why was she here? Why was she touching you? Why did you look guilty when I walked in?" "Because her father is threatening war if the merger doesn't happen. Because the merger includes me marrying Ji-won to cement the alliance. Because I've been trying to find another way out without putting you in danger. And I didn't want to worry you until I had a solution. The room spun. They want you to marry her. It's not going to happen. He reached for her, but she stepped back. The hurt in his eyes was immediate and devastating. Naya, please. I will never let them force that marriage. I'd burn down both organizations first. And what? Start a war? Get people killed? Tears burned her eyes. I can't be the reason for that. I can't have blood on my hands. There won't be blood. But his voice lacked conviction. I'll figure something out. When were you going to tell me? The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. Were you ever going to tell me, or were you just going to handle it like you handle everything in the shadows with secrets? That's not fair. Isn't it? Nia pulled off her ring, held it out with a shaking hand. Your world is secrets, Kyung-soo, and I've tried so hard to accept that, to trust you. But this? You kept this from me. You let me believe we were safe, that our marriage was solid, while another woman and her father plotted to take you from me. Nia, don't do this. His voice cracked, raw and desperate. Don't let them win. That's what Ji-won wanted. To plant doubt, to make you question us. I'm not questioning us. I'm questioning whether there can even be an us in your world. She set the ring on his desk. I can't do this anymore. I can't live in fear that every day might be the one where your past comes back to destroy our future. Then I'll leave. The words burst from him like a dam breaking. I'll walk away from all of it. The organization, the power, everything. Just don't leave me, please, Nia. You're the only good thing I've ever had. God, she wanted to believe him, wanted to throw herself into his arms and pretend love could fix everything. But she'd seen the loyalty his men had for him, the people who depended on him, the community he protected in his own twisted way. You can't leave, she said softly, tears streaming down her face now. They'd never let you, and even if they did, you'd resent me eventually for making you give up who you are. I could never resent you. He closed the distance between them, framed her face with shaking hands. Nia, Saranghai, I love you more than my own life. Please. She'd never heard him use Korean endearments before. It broke something in her chest. But she forced herself to step back, to pick up her purse, to move toward the door. I need time, she whispered. I need to think. How much time? I don't know. She left before he could respond, before her resolve could crumble. Left him standing in that office, her ring on his desk, their marriage in pieces around them. She didn't know she was pregnant. Wouldn't know for another 2 weeks, when the morning sickness started and the test showed 2 pink lines, and her world tilted on its axis all over again. By then, it was too late. The divorce papers had been filed, and Nia, proud and stubborn and terrified of being a burden, kept the secret to herself. 8 months. 8 months of living in her grandmother's old apartment in the Bronx. 8 months of working double shifts at 2 different medical offices to save money. 8 months of watching her belly grow and feeling their baby kick and wondering if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. 8 months of missing him so badly it physically hurt. Nia had sent the divorce papers to his lawyer, then blocked his number, blocked his emails, disappeared into her old life like their marriage had been a dream. She told herself it was for the best, that bringing a baby into his dangerous world would be selfish, that their child deserved safety over luxury. She told herself a lot of lies. The truth was she was terrified. Terrified he'd try to take the baby, terrified he'd reject them both. Terrified of 1,000 scenarios that kept her awake at night, one hand on her swollen belly, feeling their daughter's strong kicks and crying for the father her baby would never know. You need to tell him, her grandmother had said 100 times. But she'd never told him about the arranged marriage threat either, had she? Never trusted him enough to weather that storm together. The contractions started during her evening shift at the clinic. First a twinge, then a cramp, then waves of pain that made her gasp and grab the desk. Nia. Dr. Martinez appeared at her side. Your water just broke. We need to get you to the hospital. Everything after that was chaos. The ambulance ride, the bright lights of the ER, the pain that went from manageable to unbearable. And through it all, one thought kept circling her mind. He should be here. Kyung-soo should be here. The baby's in distress, a doctor said, her voice tight with concern. We need to do an emergency C-section. Miss Washington, is there anyone we should call? The words left her mouth before she could stop them. My husband, Han Kyung-soo. She rattled off the number she'd tried so hard to forget. Tell him I need him. She didn't know if he'd come, didn't know if he'd forgiven her for leaving, for the divorce, for 8 months of silence. Didn't know anything except that she needed him with a desperation that eclipsed pride, eclipsed fear, eclipsed everything. The anesthesiologist was prepping her for surgery when the doors burst open. Kyung-soo stood there, still in a suit jacket thrown over sweatpants, like he'd dressed in the dark, his hair wild, his face pale, his eyes finding hers across the room with an intensity that made her sob. I'm here, he said, crossing to her in 3 strides, taking her hand like a lifeline. I'm here, Nia. I'm sorry I'm late, but I'm here now. She's dilated 8 centimeters, the doctor said. We need to move now. I have a daughter? Kyung-soo's voice cracked on the word, his hand tightening on hers. I'm sorry, Nia gasped between contractions. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you. I was scared and stupid, and later. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. We'll talk later. Right now, let's meet our daughter. They wheeled her into surgery with Kyung-soo beside her, his hand never leaving hers, his voice a steady murmur of reassurance in Korean and English, words she couldn't quite process, but that soothed something deep in her soul. When their daughter's first cry split the air, Kyung-soo went absolutely still. Then, to Nia's shock, tears streamed down his face. Her daughter, he whispered reverently. We have a daughter. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, the nurse announced, wrapping the baby in a pink blanket. Perfectly healthy. Would you like to hold her, Dad? He took their daughter like she was made of glass and stardust. His hands that had broken bones and pulled triggers, cradling her with infinite gentleness. When he looked at Nia, the love and wonder and forgiveness in his eyes made her heart crack and heal simultaneously. She has your eyes, he said, his voice thick with emotion. And she's perfect. She's absolutely perfect. Recovery was a blur. Kyung-soo refused to leave her side, sleeping in the chair beside her bed, taking their daughter. They'd named her Arya, after both their cultures, every time the nurses would let him. He changed diapers, learned to swaddle, sang to her in Korean while Nia dozed. On the second day, when they were finally alone, the conversation they'd been avoiding could no longer wait. I dealt with the Ji-won situation, Kyung-soo said quietly, watching Arya sleep in his arms. 3 days after you left. Her father wanted war, so I gave him one, economic, not physical. Bought out his companies, cut off his supply lines, backed his rivals. Within 2 months he was begging for terms. The arranged marriage demand was withdrawn permanently. Nia's heart clenched. You never tried to tell me. You blocked me everywhere. No accusation in his tone, just fact. And I thought maybe you were better off without me. Safer. Happier. I was miserable. The confession hurt. Every single day I was miserable. But I was also terrified that if I came back, I'd put our baby in danger. Our baby. He looked down at Arya, something like awe crossing his face. I can't believe I almost missed this. Missed her birth, her first moments. Nia, why didn't you trust me? Because I saw what loving you could cost. Tears spilled over. I saw the threats, the danger, the way violence is always one wrong move away in your world. How could I bring a child into that? By letting me protect you both. He looked up, and the hurt in his eyes was devastating. I would have died before letting anything happen to you or our daughter, but you didn't give me the chance. You made the choice alone. I know. Her voice broke. I know, and I'm sorry. I was wrong. I should have talked to you. Should have trusted you to find a solution together. But I was scared and hormonal and I should have told you about Ji-won the moment she contacted me. He set Arya carefully in her bassinet, then moved to sit on the edge of Nia's bed, taking her hands. I was trying to protect you from worry. Instead, I created a situation where you felt you couldn't trust me with the truth. That's on me. They sat in silence, 8 months of hurt and loneliness between them, a sleeping baby beside them who represented both their love and their failure to communicate. I don't know how we come back from this, Nia whispered finally. Neither do I. Kyung-soo's thumb traced circles on her palm. But I know I love you. I know I love our daughter. And I know I'll spend the rest of my life earning back your trust if you'll let me. What about the organization? Your responsibilities? I'm stepping back. He said it firmly, like he'd been thinking about it for months. Not leaving entirely, that would create a power vacuum and put more people at risk. But Min-jun is ready to take over day-to-day operations. I'll be an advisor, a figurehead. My priority is you two now. Always. You'd do that? Hope bloomed, fragile and terrifying. I've already started the transition. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the ring she'd left on his desk 8 months ago. This has been with me every day since you left. In my pocket, against my heart, waiting for the chance to put it back where it belongs. He looked at her with those intense dark eyes. Let me put it back, Nia. Let me be your husband again. Let me be her father. Not perfectly, because I'll mess up, but completely, with everything I am. Nia looked at their daughter, at the man she'd never stopped loving, at the life they could build if she was brave enough to try again. On one condition, she said finally. Anything. No more secrets. Even the scary ones, the dangerous ones. We face everything together. You promise me that, and I promise to trust you, to communicate instead of running. Deal? Deal. He slid the ring onto her finger, and it felt like coming home. I love you, Nia Washington Han. I never stopped. I love you too, Han Kyung-soo. Even when I was furious with you, I loved you. He kissed her then, soft and deep and full of promise, tasting of tears and hope and new beginnings. From her bassinet, Arya made a small sound, not quite a cry, more like a comment on her parents' reunion. They broke apart, laughing through their tears. She's got opinions already, Nia said, wiping her eyes. She's your daughter. Kyung-soo grinned, the real genuine smile she'd fallen in love with. Of course she has opinions. He picked up Arya, and Nia's heart swelled at the sight. This powerful, dangerous man who brought crime bosses to their knees, utterly undone by a 7-pound infant. When he sat beside Nia on the bed, their daughter between them, she felt something click into place. This was her family. Imperfect. Complicated. Born from mistakes and forgiveness and love that refused to die. You know, Kyung-soo said softly, running a finger over Arya's tiny hand. My father used to say that the strongest chains aren't made of steel or gold. They're made of love and blood, and the promises we keep to the people who matter most. Wise man. He was also a terrifying crime lord. Kyung-soo's smile was wry. But he loved my mother more than power, more than the organization. When she got sick, he walked away from everything to care for her. I never understood that until now. He looked at Nia, eyes shining. Until you. Until her. Now I'd burn down my whole empire if it meant keeping you both safe. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Nia murmured, resting her head on his shoulder. Let's hope, he agreed. But they both knew, in his world, in their world now, hope was something you fought for, something you protected with everything you had. 3 days later, they brought Arya home, not to Kyung-soo's sterile penthouse, but to a brownstone in Brooklyn he'd bought 2 years ago and never told her about. I bought it right after we got married, he admitted, pulling up to the tree-lined street. I wanted somewhere that felt like a home, not a fortress, somewhere safe for... He trailed off, looking embarrassed. For a family, Nia finished, her throat tight. For a family, he confirmed. The house was perfect. 3 stories of exposed brick and hardwood floors, a garden out back, a nursery already set up with a crib and rocking chair and everything a baby could need. Nia turned to him, incredulous. When did you do all this? The day you told me you were pregnant, or rather, the day the hospital called me. He set Arya's car seat down gently. I had 4 hours to prepare. I called in every favor I had. You're ridiculous. But she was smiling, crying, overwhelmed by this man who'd spent 8 months apart from her still planning for their future. I'm yours, he corrected, pulling her close. That's all I want to be. The first weeks were chaos, sleepless nights, endless diapers, learning to function as a family. But through it all they kept their promise. When Kyung-soo had a difficult situation with the organization, he talked to Nia about it. When Nia felt overwhelmed or scared, she leaned on him instead of hiding it. They weren't perfect. They argued about his overprotectiveness when she wanted to take Arya to the park alone. They disagreed about how much to tell their daughter about his past when she got older, but they talked through it, compromised, built something stronger from the broken pieces of their first attempt. 1 month after Arya's birth, Kyung-soo came home early, which was unusual. Nia was on the couch, Arya sleeping on her chest, some reality show playing on TV. I officially resigned as head of operations today, he said without preamble. Min-jun is in charge. I'm just an advisor now. Minimal involvement unless there's an emergency. Nia sat up carefully, cradling Arya. Are you sure? I never asked you to give that up. You didn't have to ask. He sat beside them, one hand resting on Arya's tiny back. I've spent my entire adult life building power, thinking that's what would make me matter. But this, you two, this is what matters. This is my legacy now. She's going to grow up asking questions, Nia warned gently. About your tattoos, about why Uncle Min-jun always has scary friends, about why people look at you with fear and respect. And we'll answer honestly. His eyes met hers. Age-appropriate honesty, but honesty. She deserves to know who her father is, all of it. The good, the bad, the complicated. She's lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one. He leaned over, kissed Nia softly. Both of you saved me, you know that, right? Before you, I was just going through the motions. Power and fear and emptiness. You gave me a reason to be better. You were always better, Nia insisted. I just helped you see it. Arya chose that moment to wake up, her face scrunching adorably before she let out a cry. Kyung-soo immediately reached for her, scooping her up with practiced ease. Someone's hungry, he murmured, rocking her gently. Come on, beautiful girl. Let's get you fed while Mama rests. Watching him prepare a bottle, singing softly in Korean while Arya's cries quieted, Nia felt her heart expand so much it hurt. This was what she'd been afraid of losing. This gentle, loving side of him that only appeared for the people he trusted completely. Later that night, after Arya was asleep in her crib and they were finally alone, Kyung-soo pulled Nia close in their bed. I have something for you, he said, producing a small box. More jewelry? She'd started wearing the necklace he'd given her for their first anniversary again. Not exactly. He opened the box to reveal a key. This is for the safe in my office. It contains everything, bank accounts, property deeds, business documents, contacts, everything. If anything ever happens to me, you'll have access to everything you need to protect yourself and Arya. The gift was so practical, so him, that Nia wanted to laugh and cry simultaneously. Nothing is going to happen to you. Probably not, he agreed. But I promise no more secrets. This is me keeping that promise, complete transparency, complete trust. She took the key, then set it aside to cup his face. I love you so much it scares me sometimes. Good. His smile was equal parts tender and wicked. I like keeping you on your toes. He kissed her then, and for the first time since Arya's birth, the kiss deepened into something more. When his hand started wandering, Nia pulled back slightly. The doctor said 6 weeks, she reminded him breathlessly. I know. He kissed her neck, her collarbone. I'm just reminding you what's waiting when those 6 weeks are up. You're terrible. You love me anyway. God help me, I do. They fell asleep, tangled together. The monitor on the nightstand broadcasting their daughter's soft breathing, the key to his secrets on the dresser, their second chance at forever feeling solid and real. 6 months later, they renewed their vows. Not a big ceremony, just family and close friends in the garden of their Brooklyn brownstone. Arya in a tiny white dress, serving as the most adorable flower girl who mostly just cooed and grabbed at petals. Minjun officiated, standing under an arch wrapped in orchids, both Korean and African flowers, symbolizing their merged cultures. Do you, Han Kyung-soo, promise to love, cherish, and protect Nia Washington Han, in sickness and health, in danger and safety, for all the days of your life? I do, Kyung-soo said, his voice steady but his eyes suspiciously bright. And I promise to never keep secrets, to always choose her and our family first, and to be worthy of the trust she's placed in me. And do you, Nia Washington Han, promise to love, cherish, and trust Han Kyung-soo, in sickness and health, in joy and sorrow, for all the days of your life? I do, Nia whispered, squeezing his hands. And I promise to communicate instead of running, to face our challenges together, and to remind him every day that he's a good man. Then, by the power vested in me, and let's be honest, I basically run a criminal empire, so that's a lot of power, I pronounce you husband and wife again. Young, kiss your wife before she changes her mind. The small crowd laughed. Kyung-soo grinned, pulled Nia close and kissed her like it was the first time and the last time and every time in between. When they broke apart, Arya let out a happy squeal from where Nia's grandmother held her. She approves, Nia's grandmother announced, wiping tears from her eyes. My baby got her happy ending after all. It's not an ending, Grandma, Nia said, taking Arya from her and settling their daughter on her hip. It's a beginning. Years later, on a warm Saturday afternoon, Nia stood at the kitchen window of their brownstone, watching her husband teach their daughter, now 4 years old, how to tend the tomato plants in their garden. Arya's natural curls were pulled into 2 puffs, her brown skin glowing in the sunlight. Her small hands carefully watering the plants while Kyung-soo guided her. Gentle, Ari, he said in Korean, then repeated in English. The plants are delicate. Like baby sister? Arya asked, patting Nia's growing belly. She was 6 months pregnant with their second daughter. Exactly like baby sister. I'll be gentle with her too, Appa, Arya promised solemnly. Watching them, Nia felt peace settle over her like a warm blanket. The road to this moment hadn't been easy. There had been more challenges. A rival organization making threats that Minjun handled swiftly, adjusting to life with a newborn while rebuilding trust, learning to balance Kyung-soo's residual involvement with the organization against family time. But they'd weathered every storm together. The doorbell rang. Through the window, she saw Minjun arrive with his new girlfriend, a sharp-witted immigration lawyer who had him completely wrapped around her finger. Behind them came David, now happily married with twins. Sunday dinners had become tradition, the Brooklyn brownstone filling with the family they'd chosen, not just blood but bonds forged through loyalty and love. Korean BBQ cooking alongside Nia's grandmother's collard greens, multiple languages floating through conversations, children running through the garden. Remember when you told me you were just a waitress and a medical transcriptionist? Kyung-soo's voice came from behind her. He wrapped his arms around her waist, one hand settling over their unborn daughter. I remember you telling me I was unemployed, she countered, leaning back against his chest. Look how wrong I was. He pressed a kiss to her neck. You're not unemployed. You're the CEO of our family, the keeper of my heart, the mother of my children, and the only person in the world who can make me forget my own name with just a look. Smooth talker. Only for you. He turned her to face him, and she saw it. The same intensity that had undone her that first night in the Lotus Club, softened now by years of love and trust, and choosing each other every single day. Do you ever regret it? Choosing this complicated life with me? Nia looked past him to where Arya was showing Uncle Minjun her tomato plants, her laughter bright and clear. She thought about the life she'd imagined for herself before Han Kyung-soo, safe, predictable, small. Not for a single second, she said honestly. You're my person, Kyung-soo. This is exactly where I'm meant to be. Nobody touches what's mine, Arya suddenly shouted in the garden, startling everyone. She stood protectively in front of her tomato plant, glaring at a crow that had landed nearby. Min Jun burst out laughing. I wonder where she learned that phrase. Kyung-soo had the grace to look sheepish. She might have heard me say it once or twice. Once or twice, Nia raised an eyebrow. You say it every time someone looks at me or Arya for too long. Can you blame me? He pulled her closer. You're mine. She's mine. This whole beautiful, chaotic life is mine. I'm just making sure the universe knows it. Possessive man. You're possessive man. Their lips met. The kiss tasting of promises kept and futures unfolding. When they broke apart, their family was watching through the window. Min Jun making exaggerated gagging noises, David grinning, Nia's grandmother smiling with satisfaction. Arya pressed against the glass making kissy faces. This was their happy ending. Hard-won, imperfect, more precious because of every obstacle they'd overcome to reach it. A black woman who dared to love a Korean man from a world of shadows. A criminal who'd found redemption in her light. And the family they'd built together brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day. I love you, Nia whispered against his lips. I love you more, Kyung-soo replied, and I'll spend the rest of our lives proving it. Outside, their daughter called for them, her voice bright with joy and possibility. They went to her together, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. Because they'd learned the most important lesson. Love wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone who made you want to be better, who stood by you through darkness and light, who chose you every single day. And they would choose each other, always.